Don't look for it on YouTube if you were going to. We need to back up one page. I said we would pick up somewhere around 443 or so probably still around there. We're still in the scene where Tom Riddle has come back to ask for a teaching job at Hogwarts while Dumbledore is headmaster. And he told Dumbledore, I've pushed the boundaries of magic further perhaps than they have ever been pushed. And Dumbledore kind of interrupts him, okay? Because you get the dash after Voldemort speaks, and Dumbledore says, of some kinds of magic. Notice, corrected him quietly. It's almost as if Dumbledore is speaking to himself. So he's sitting on one side of the desk, Voldemort's on the other, and Voldemort asserts, kind of strongly, I have pushed the boundaries of magic further perhaps than they have ever been pushed. And it's almost like Dumbledore just says under his breath, some kinds of magic, Tom. Some kinds. And for the first time, we're told, Voldemort smiles. A taut leer. An evil thing. More threatening than a look of rage. The old argument. Notice, he says softly. Okay? Dumbledore said some kinds of magic quietly. He responds in kind. Okay? The old argument. But nothing I have seen in the world has supported your famous pronouncement that love is more powerful than my kind of magic. What's the argument?
Love conquers all.
Is it that love conquers all? Or is it that there's, a plethora of kinds of magic, but the most powerful, the most long-lasting of those is love? And what does he mean by love? Because that word is so bandied about in our society, it really no longer has any meaning. People say, oh, I love my cell phone. And in the next moment they say, oh, I love my boyfriend or girlfriend or husband or wife or whatever. Really? Same word, different objects. Right? In Greek, love has 4 different words to express it. Right? The old argument. Now notice what he says. But nothing I have seen in the world supports your famous pronouncements that love is more powerful than my kind of magic. Notice, he doesn't say love is the most powerful kind of magic. He says Dumbledore has what? Pronounced. That is, asserted. Not necessarily taught. When you teach, you're kind of building by argument up to a conclusion. Dumbledore just kind of starts, if I can read into this just a little bit, like Thomas Jefferson begins the Declaration of Independence. What? We hold these truths to be what? Self-evident. That is, self-evident means what? They don't need to be explained. They don't need to be argued. These are self-evident truths like hard, gravity. Okay? But think about those quote-unquote self-evident truths for a moment. That all men are endowed by their Creator with what? Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That is, these are, Jefferson's words, unalienable rights. Okay? Well, if you take the history of humanity, that is, from first recorded history, not going all the way back to, simians descending from trees or whatever, but from recorded history, let's say, to 1776 when Tom Jefferson drafts that document. Where is the quote-unquote right to life in recorded history? Gail's back there. There is none. Liberty? How often do we see in recorded history prior to 1776 people living, quote-unquote, free? Or people free to pursue happiness? Yeah, I mean, it depends somewhat on your status. If you're a king or the son of a king, you pretty much have things going for you. Until what, though? Especially if we talk about, pre-Western Europe. Go back to BC times. Until what? Well, until somebody else decides they want to be king, and you get bumped off. Or until your little brother decides he doesn't want big brother to be king. Or uncle doesn't want brother's son, to be king. In which case you have the Lion King, right? Also known as Hamlet. It's all Lion King is. It's Hamlet updated for modern audience, right? If the truth is to be self-evident, shouldn't it be clear all times, all places, everywhere? That truth, those truths, quote unquote, to me at least, don't seem to be self-evident. In other words, that's an assertion Jefferson is saying is truth. Personally, I think he's wrong. I think you have to prove that those are so-called truths. Because the vast history of humanity says the exact opposite. Okay? So what's the truth that Voldemort says Dumbledore has pronounced? Love is greater than what? Dark magic. The dark arts. Okay. Remember Snape's introduction to the dark arts? It's like, he's been working on this speech for how long? 15 years. I mean, he's been dying to teach this class. Now, notice he did get to sub a little bit during Lupin's year. Okay? He didn't give the speech then. But what does he say about the dark arts? They're eternal. They're ever-changing. They're mutable. Okay? Is love eternal? Is it ever-changing? Is it mutable? Okay. And again, what does he mean by love? Is this erotic love? Erotic love is more powerful than the dark arts? Well, Bellatrix kind of, she's mixing the two together in some weird way. Dumbledore, look at his response. Perhaps you've been looking in the wrong places. Where's Tom been looking? According to what he says, nothing I have seen in the world. Well, where's he been? I mean, we talked about he's been in Albania. Okay. Has he gone looking for love? As the old, I think it is, Stephen Bishop song says, in all the wrong places? Looking for love in all the wrong faces? Or is it like, I think it's another Stephen Bishop song. If you can't love the one you want, love the one you're with. Okay, that's the erotic kind. Dumbledore, perhaps you've been looking in the wrong places. What are the wrong places?
Anywhere outside yourself.
Bingo. Outside. Not inside. For those of you who are quote unquote religious, where does Jesus say the kingdom of heaven is to be found? Inside. He says, seek inside. Okay? Should I go there? Yeah, well. How was Tom Riddle Jr. conceived? Did I talk about this the other day? No, I think in my night class. How was he conceived? Under the influence of a love potion. You know where I'm going? What J.K. Rowling has said? So under the influence of a love potion means what, really? Let's say in our world, because we don't have love potions. Notwithstanding the quacks who want to sell you, various aphrodisiacs and such, which aren't really love potions, but,
Alcohol, substances.
Okay.
It's false. It's not real love.
It's not real love. What is it really? She gives him a love potion so she can marry him, etc. It's rape. It's rape. She rapes Tom Riddle. Maripe does. How? Because it's entirely what? Against his will. He doesn't desire her. Inside. He's under the love potion, so he is forced to do what she wants. It's only after she's pregnant that apparently she removes the love potion, and then what do we see? His will comes out, and he says, see ya, and leaves. Okay? J.K. Rowling has said, I think in an interview, and this might also be in Pottermore, but she's definitely said it in an interview. Tom Riddle is incapable of love. It's not that he doesn't love. Tom Riddle Jr., Lord Voldemort. He is incapable. He cannot love. It is impossible for him to love. Because, she says, he was conceived without love. Okay, let that sit for a moment and then extrapolate from world of a novel, where she says that holds true, to our world. She's saying within the world of the novel, it's impossible for him to love because he was conceived not out of love. Real world. What then does that mean? Louder? He's a sociopath? Well, he clearly is.
Yeah.
What else, though? Louder, so everybody can hear.
Well, she's basically saying that anyone else who is conceived through rape or whichever is going to end up socially.
That anybody else not conceived in love, let's not go that far. Let's not say anybody who's the product of rape is automatically a sociopath. But to take her words and extrapolate them does then mean anybody who is not conceived in love is not capable of real love.
It's not that they're not capable of love, it's just that they've never been able to learn love from young people that they're supposed to.
Okay? Tom Riddle never has love modeled for him, right? With a little slight proviso, Maripe does give birth to him. You would think within the context of a novel, she could have ended that pregnancy, but she doesn't. Why? Probably because he is a memory, he is a reminder of the man she loved, or thought she loved maybe. Okay? But if you take Rowling's idea and apply it to the real world, it implies anybody conceived in anything outside of love is, her words, incapable of love. So what does that do to everyone who's the product of, let's say, rape, incest, which are both bad, right? I think everybody, hopefully, everybody nod for me to tell me that you're morally correct, okay? One night stands. A one night stand, I think most people would say, that's not love. You know, that quote unquote emotion or good feeling that one might have for an hour or 2 hours or 20 minutes or 20 hours ain't love. It's what? It's lust. It's desire. Okay? So does that mean all of those produced by one night stands or 2 night stands or quote unquote casual hookups are incapable of love? What is this idea really? Now I want you to apply some kind of moral epithet to it. It's repugnant. It is vile. Because if it is true, that is, if that idea is true, that Rowling has suggested, then what should we do to everyone not conceived in love? Zan, expression on your face is giving me an idea of what we should do to them. If they're incapable of love, shouldn't we round them up, put them all in a room together, and let them take care of the problem themselves? I mean, this is where, people say, oh, books aren't real. Books have no real application to... Yeah, they do. Why? Because books communicate ideas. And ideas should be taken seriously. Doesn't mean you have to accept them, but they should be taken seriously. So that if the idea is and I know this is not popular language on college campuses today. If an idea is wrong, it's a bad idea, it should be held up and shown to be wrong, to be bad, so that people don't accept it. Look at the ideology of Voldemort. If we don't say that ideology is wrong or bad, then what can that lead to? People accepting that this notion of pure blood is a good idea. Well, what does that throw us back to? Eugenics? Holocaust? Which, by the way, the eugenic movement. Who was one of the leading lights of the eugenic movement in the United States in the early 20th century? Anybody know? You should know her name. Anybody know who Margaret K. Sanger is? / was? Founder of Planned Parenthood. Do you know one of the reasons she founded Planned Parenthood? What the eugenics, beautiful, what? Genes movement is, or what she was proposing? She wanted to rid the world of bad genes. Not these. What did she mean by bad genes? What did she mean? Let's use Malfoy's term. And as we've said in here, what really are mudbloods? Modern English, niggers. She was against blacks. She wanted to rid our United States, American society, of blacks. This is the founder of Planned Parenthood. You know the vast majority of abortions performed by Planned Parenthood? It's like 83% are black children. It's the greatest eugenics movement the world has ever seen. Hitler couldn't hold a candle to that. Whether, it doesn't matter to me whether or not you're pro-choice, pro-life. This is a basic fact. It's not open to debate in terms of that. Okay? So there's an idea an example of where there's an idea in something that has a strong correlation to what? Real life. Okay? So, the old argument. Perhaps you've been looking in the wrong place because he's been looking for it elsewhere. Or has he really been looking? What did Dumbledore tell us about Voldemort from 11 years old on? He has no what? He has no friends. It's not like he wanted any friends. Why? Well, I think this is where we can go a little bit back to Merope. What did Harry say about Merope? She wouldn't even stay alive for her son. I think Tom Riddle had the exact same thought. She wouldn't even stay alive for me. She couldn't have been magic, or she wouldn't have died. So what does he equate magic with? Life. Continuing, preserving, extending life. Perhaps you've been looking in the wrong places. Okay. Mr. Wise Man, what better place to start my fresh researches than here? What does Tom Riddle understand love to be?
Weakness.
Louder?
Weakness.
Weakness? What else? Because he says, what better place to start my research? It is merely an academic study. It is something to be investigated. Will you let me return? Will you let me share my knowledge with your students? I place myself and my talents at your disposal. Notice, I am at your command. That's kind of like falling down on one knee and saying, my Lord, I am your vassal. I am your servant. Dumbledore. Notice his eyebrows raise. And what will become of those whom you command? What's he mean by this little, you're Death Eaters. What's Dumbledore showing here? As Tom Riddle says, omniscient as always, you know everything. Okay. What else though? You call yourself Lord. Are you putting all of them at my disposal too? Are they all going to come in for remedial love lessons? We're going to sit around and read the teachings of Buddha, read the teachings of Confucius, read the teachings of Jesus. My friends will carry on without me. Dumbledore. I'm glad to hear that you consider them friends. Why?
He doesn't think he's capable of that.
Because friends implies this. We still haven't discussed what this is. We will. Maybe not today. I was under the impression that they are more in the order of servants. Can a servant not be a friend? Sam Gamgee. He's Frodo's servant, but is he really? He's Frodo's employee, okay, and friend. Dumbledore doesn't mean that. He means what by servant? Slave. You are mistaken. Oh, so if I were to go to the Hogshead tonight, I wouldn't find them all sitting there? Not Rosier, Multiple, Drolohoff, all names we've heard before. Sirius says some of these names to Harry, Ron, and Hermione at the cave outside Hogsmeade when he talks about Snape having a bunch of friends when he was a student. You are omniscient as ever. Dumbledore, no, I'm merely friends with the local barmen. Barmen, notice plural, not singular. Though who does that local barman include? His brother, who does weird things with goats. So Dumbledore, we're told, sets down his empty glass, drew himself up in his seat, so he's sitting nice and upright, tips of his fingers together in a very characteristic gesture. He's kind of sitting like this. Notice in kind of popular religious iconography, what kind of gesture is this? It's almost like he's praying. Like, come on, Tom. Tell me the right answer. Tell me the true answer. Let's speak openly. Why have you come here tonight surrounded by henchmen? To request a job we both know you don't want. A job I do not want. On the contrary, I want it very much. Oh, I know you want to come back to Hogwarts, but you don't want to teach any more than you wanted to when you were 18. What are you after? Try an open request for once. That phrase, try an open request for once, gets paralleled at the end of book 7. It's just not try an open request for once. Try for some remorse. Harry says to Tom Riddle. Left, I believe, those of you who've seen it can correct me, what I've been told, left out of the film. It's very important that it's left out of the film, because there's a thing left out of the end of the 7th film, out of the 8th film, and out of the beginning of the 7th film, which completely changes the plot from film 1 to the end of film 8. You take these two things out, and it makes the meaning of the films the exact opposite of what it is in the books, which we'll talk about when we get to. Well, if you don't want to give, of course I don't want to give you a job. I mean, look at you. You'd scare the students half to death. I mean, snake-like face almost. Eyes are turning red. They're not yet slits, but his face looks like worn leather. And it's not because he's been at, Saint-Tropez for the last several years, sunning himself. And I don't think for a moment you expected me to. But you came here, you must have had a purpose. What's Dumbledore trying to do?
Figure out what he's up to.
Yeah, he's trying to dig inside. He's trying to get Tom Riddle to do what? Seemingly for once. Tell the truth. Yes?
I'm just wondering, how did his features come with that? Is that because of him splitting his soul up?
It's entirely the reason. When Harry sees him as a 5th year, Chamber of Secrets, how's Tom Riddle appear? Handsome. I mean, not just human. I mean, because you could be Quasimodo and be human. Okay? He's handsome. He's a looker. I mean, what are we told about Tom Riddle Sr.? Woo! I said to my other class the other night, maybe it's just me, but Tom Riddle Sr. rides by on a horse, and Maripe is enthralled. I'm thinking Tom Riddle Sr. is kind of like Clark Gable in Gone with the Wind. I mean, where she goes, ha ha ha. Wow. He's not like Morphin, obviously. He's not, I don't think he's average looking. I think, pick your Hollywood star, just drop dead handsome. Chris Hemsworth on a horse, For you ladies, clothed or not, whatever you. My daughter would say, stop. My daughters would say, stop, just right there. Let me just, like Ron with the bouncing ferret. Let me imagine that for a while. Tell me the truth. Why? Because if you can get one bit of truth out of Tom Riddle, then he has what? He's got an opening. He's got an opening. He can start to maybe then get 2. Because what happens once you begin a habit? The habit becomes easier. This is your final word, Dumbledore it is. Then we have nothing more to say to each other. In other words, game on. It will be duel time next time we meet. Dumbledore, no, nothing. And a great sadness filled his face. The time is long gone. What? When I could frighten you with a burning wardrobe and force you to make repayment for your crimes. Notice that. Frighten and force. How often do we see Dumbledore frighten and force people? Very seldom. I mean, he bursts into, quote-unquote, Mad-Eye Moody's class office, knocks the door down, but then he's frightening and forcing, Harry too. He's like, whoa. Why? Because frightening and forcing doesn't change what? This. What's the problem with Hogwarts now, according to the Sorting Hat, Book 5? It's downhearted. It doesn't change the heart. It doesn't repair the heart. Quote unquote, forced conversions. Like ISIS has been trying throughout the Middle East. Convert to Islam or die. Well, I'm sure some people converted to Islam by saying the words. And maybe inside saying at the same time, forgive me, Jesus, for saying this. And others said, the hell with you. He died on a cross, cut my head off. Or you could go back in history, Charlemagne. Charlemagne, forced conversion of pagans. How forced? Sword point. It's really no different than ISIS. Okay? What's a conversion have to be in order to be real? It's got to come from where? Not outside, inside. Okay? Where is he looking for love? Outside. Dumbledore seems to think Tom Riddle might be capable of it. Otherwise, why the old argument? If Dumbledore thinks the way Rowling thinks, would Dumbledore even bother? Because he'd go, I may as well try to talk to that wall about love and say, show a little more love next time somebody bangs their head up against you. Give a little. It's not like the wall can. But I wish, Tom, I wish I could. He wishes he could what? Force and frighten. But he's beyond that. Harry, notice for a second, was on the verge of shouting a pointless warning. He sees Voldemort, or he thinks he sees Voldemort's hand twitch toward his pocket. So they come back up. Harry, did you ever find out why he wanted to come back? Ideas, Harry. What are his ideas related to? Have you gotten that memory I need? No. And you're really working your hardest? You're using all your powers and skills and capabilities? How did Harry first ask Professor Slughorn? How did he try and go about the memory? Yeah, can you tell me anything about Horcruxes? Which is what? The exact same thing Tom Riddle did. Okay? Leave all this off for a moment, and I'm just going to put one word up. The unknowable room. Harry's thinking, how in the world, that's right, I've got to finish early. How in the world, how am I going to get that memory from Slughorn? And I'm going to skip a bunch. He talks to Dobby. Dobby talks to Harry about Malfoy and what Malfoy's been doing. And about the room of requirement. The only problem for Harry is, what does the room of requirement do for him? Got I mean, he goes to it and he says, I need you to be the room that you become for Malfoy. Well, that's not the same thing as becoming the room that Malfoy needs. So the room of requirement only works for what? Your requirement, your desires, your needs at that particular moment. Okay? So, let's skip a bunch. Let's go to chapter 22. And go to where it is. Aragog dies about, 482 or so. And Harry's down with them for Aragog's quote-unquote funeral. It's a big giant spider, just zap him. But Harry's there with Slughorn. And what does Harry finally do? How's he get the memory? Yeah, he gets him drunk and
He tells him that he's the chosen one. He needs that memory to defeat Voldemort.
okay,
He tells him to be brave like his father.
okay, and what's he use? Good luck charm. Felix Felicis. Okay, but exactly as Brandy said, he does use all of that. He reminds Slughorn of his mother. He's kind of like, look in my eyes. Because everybody who looks in his eyes, who knew her, sees Lily. And he says, around 487 or so, he starts talking to Slughorn about his parents' death. Slughorn, terrible, terrible. Harry, I don't suppose you remember it. Harry, he asked. No, I was only one when they died, but I found out pretty much what happened since. My dad died first. Did you know? No, I didn't. Yeah. Voldemort murdered him and then stepped over his body towards my mom. Okay, keep in mind, Slughorn's already plastered at this point. He told her to get out of the way. He told me she needn't have died. He only wanted me. She could have run. Oh, that's horrible. That's awful. It is, isn't it? But she didn't move. Dad was already dead, but she didn't want me to go too. She tried to plead with Voldemort, but he just laughed. Slughorn's like, stop, really, stop. I'm an old man. I don't need to hear. Harry, I forgot. You liked her, didn't you? Just kind of turning the knife a little bit. Liked her. I don't imagine anyone who met her wouldn't have liked her. Very brave, very funny, most horrible. But you won't help her son? You won't give me a memory? Don't. It's not a question of Harry, purpose can be served. It can. Dumbledore needs information. I need information. And then he just turns up the heat. I am the chosen one. I have to kill him. I need that memory. You are the chosen one? Of course I am. But then, my dear boy, you're asking, you don't want to get rid of the wizard who killed Lily Evans? Harry, of course I do. You're scared? He'll find out you helped me? Be brave like my mother, Professor. Has Slughorn ever been brave before in his life? Apparently, not really. I am not proud. I think I may have done great damage that day. Notice what Harry says. You'd cancel out anything you did by giving me the memory. Think about that for a moment. You'd cancel out anything you did. Okay. He did give Tom Riddle information about Horcruxes, right? About how they work, and essentially how you do them. Essentially. He doesn't give him the exact spell. Okay? Harry says, if you tell me that memory, if you give that memory to me, it will cancel out. In other words, wiped clean. What's Harry really mean?
I forgive you.
You'll be forgiven for this. It won't be held against you. It would be a very brave and noble thing to do. Because how hard is it to... Is he saying apologize? No, what's he talking about? Essentially, restitution. Giving it back. Making it good. Making it right. Right? Well, think about what happened as a result of Slughorn telling Tom Riddle about Horcruxes.
It's not like he wouldn't have found out anyway.
Okay, it's possible he wouldn't have found out anyway. Possible. I'm not saying that it's necessarily true that he would have found out.
I mean, you had the book, they were discussing in the 7th book that there was a book on Horcruxes that Hermione got
Where'd Hermione get that?
in Dumbledore's office.
Where'd Dumbledore get it?
From the library.
Okay. How long has it been there that is in Dumbledore's office?
Since he found out what was going on, I read it.
Okay. Hagrid twitches in his sleep. Slughorn, you're a good boy, and you've got her eyes. Just don't think too badly of me once you've seen it. Harry goes to Dumbledore. Notice, Harry leaves there, and he goes straight to Dumbledore. What time is it? It's like midnight, 1 a.m. Okay? Runs up to Dumbledore, and Dumbledore doesn't say, thank you, Harry, we'll take a look at this in the morning. Why? This is like knowing the nuclear launch codes. He's got to take a look at it right now. And notice, it's a pretty detailed memory. Okay? So skip a few pages in, go to around, 496 or so. A Horcrux is the word used for an object in which a person has concealed part of their soul. I don't quite know how that works. Well, you split your soul, you see. Hide part of it in an object outside the body. Then, even if one's body is attacked or destroyed, one cannot die, for part of the soul remains earthbound and undamaged. Notice, part of the soul remains earthbound and undamaged. Really? If it's part of the soul, it's what? It is very damaged. Okay? Hermione's going to tell Harry, well, in fact, he's going to say it here in just a moment. Very few would want it, Tom. Death would be preferable. That's the exact same language Harry uses with Firenze at the end of the first book. Well, death would be preferable, wouldn't it? Than living a half-life cursed from drinking unicorn blood. You must understand, when Tom Riddle says, how do you split your soul? The soul is supposed to remain intact and whole. Splitting it is an act of violation. It is against nature. And Tom Jefferson would probably throw in, and nature's God. He's talking about this idea of natural law. Well, how do you do it? Notice, how deep do Slughorn's words sink into Tom Riddle's consciousness? They just skim along the top like oil on water. By an act of evil, the supreme act of evil, by committing murder. Why is murder the supreme act of evil? You're taking someone else's life. What else are you taking? It's like all three unforgivable curses wrapped up into one. Okay? You're denying their free will, which, according to the fathers of the church, is denying their likeness to God. That ability to choose. Killing rips the soul apart. The wizard, intent upon creating a Horcrux, would use the damage to its advantage. It would encase the torn portion. But how? Well, there's a spell. I don't know how. So he goes on. Well, if one is good, can you only split it once? Wouldn't it be better? I don't know. Make you stronger? Make you less likely to be killed if you split your soul in more pieces? Slughorn hears that, and what's he thinking of? Mass murder? Tom Riddle's merely thinking of survival. Wouldn't it be best To have your soul in 7 pieces? Powerfully magical number. It's in numerology, it's considered to be the perfect number. Merlin's beard, Tom! Isn't it bad enough to think of killing one person? But to rip it into 7 pieces. What's he thinking? The damage it would do to the person doing the killing. How many people did Peter Pettigrew kill? 13 when he disappeared. So Slughorn says, oh, well, of course, this is all merely academic. It's merely theory. Why does he say that?
Trying to console himself.
Yeah. That's him assuaging his own conscience for what he's just said. So Dumbledore brings Harry out. Harry, you think he succeeded then? He hit a bit of his soul? Yeah, a bit more. As far as I know, Voldemort, as far as I am sure, as Voldemort knew, no wizard had ever done more than tear his soul in 2. No wizard had ever killed more than one person? Really? Or does he mean with the Horcrux spell? Okay. So, Dumbledore says, 4 years ago, you gave me proof. Harry, Tom Riddle's diary. Very good, Harry. The diary had been a Horcrux. But that raised more questions. Harry, I don't understand. Well, it worked as a Horcrux is supposed to work. A fragment of soul concealed inside it was kept safe and had undoubtedly played its part in preventing the death of its owner. It could be no doubt Riddle really wanted that diary read, wanted the piece of his soul to inhabit or possess somebody else, so that Slytherin's monster could be unleashed. Harry, well, he didn't want his hard work to be wasted. Dumbledore, exactly right. But then you did what to it? Stabbed it with a basilisk fang and killed the bit of soul in it. Right? And then 2 years ago, Dumbledore says, you told me on the night Voldemort returned what? I, who have gone further than anybody along the path that leads to immortality. Further than anybody, he says. The Death Eaters didn't understand that. He was referring to Horcruxes, Harry. Plural. Lord Voldemort had seemed to grow less human with the passing years. The transformation he had undergone seemed to me to be only explicable if his soul was mutilated beyond the realms of what we might call usual evil. In other words, he's becoming less and less human. Why? Because he's become less and less human by splitting his soul. So, Harry, when Dumbledore says, I think the idea of a 7-part soul would greatly appeal to Lord Voldemort. He made 7 Horcruxes? But they could be anywhere. Dumbledore, glad you understand the gravity of the situation. Because what does this mean? Now we have to search the whole world. He says, no, Harry. 1, I don't think he made 7 Horcruxes. I think he made 6. The 7th part of his soul remains inside his regenerated body. Well, let's just jump to the end for a moment. Lord Voldemort, let's say it's the first part, remains in his body. Diary. Ring. Notice. Destroyed. Still around. Still around. Still around. Notice, not 7. What does that mean? If 7 is the perfect number, then anything not 7 is the opposite. what it is. It's oops.
He didn't mean to make Harry a Horcrux.
He didn't mean to make Harry a Horcrux.
When did Gandalf figure out that Harry was a Horcrux?
Oh, a nice little verbal slip. Did you catch that? When did Gandalf
Oh.
figure that out? I love that.
Sorry.
Just made my
Don't
whole semester worthwhile. Okay. When did Dumbledore what?
understand that Harry was a Horcrux. Like as soon as it happened, or that was the question I've always had.
When do you think?
It's before book one, because he says that there's part of Voldemort.
It's before book one.
Okay.
It's when it's when Harry lives. And he's got the scar. He's proven correct, beginning book one. But he gets the proof, kind of so to speak, let's say in book two, when he tells Harry, what? The night you got that scar, Voldemort did what? Dumbledore says, transferred some of his powers to you. Like he cursed you and said, here, Harry. Harry interprets that and says what? He put a bit of himself into me? And Dumbledore says, yes, I think that's so. Harry interprets it and interprets it in a much more literal sense than Dumbledore says at the beginning. He literally has a bit of Voldemort in him. And what begins to happen once Harry knows that from that point on, it's like he gets each successive book a little more in touch with the dark within. Really reaching kind of its peak in which book? 5. Where Harry's pretty much pissed the entire time. Why? Because Voldemort's back. And he's angry. Right? So they keep talking. The diary and the ring are gone, so Dumbledore says, there's 4 that remain plus Voldemort's. What's he not doing?
He doesn't want Harry to know that he needs to die.
He doesn't want Harry to know yet. Yeah. That you're the sacrificial lamb, Harry. Or as Snape refers to him, the pig. So, they talk about the trophies, and Harry starts putting together why Voldemort, a.k.a. Tom Riddle, was buying stuff up from Borgin and Burke's. Locket, Hufflepuff's cup? Yes. Okay. And then Dumbledore says he was after relics of the 4 founders. He says, and if he could have gotten something of Gryffindor, 4 objects from the 4 founders would, I am sure, have exerted a powerful pull over Voldemort's imagination. Cannot answer for whether we ever managed to find anything of Ravenclaw's. I'm confident, however, the only known relic of Gryffindor remains safe. What's he talking about? The sword. But it's not the only known relic of Gryffindor. Because the Sorting Hat tells them, first song, Godric Gryffindor whipped me off his head. Put a bit of his brains inside. In fact, all 4 founders do. So it's literally a relic, in the Catholic Church, the Orthodox Church, clothing worn by quote-unquote saints is sanctified, becomes imbued with power, so to speak. Okay? That's Godric Gryffindor's sword. So is the hat. How do you know? Harry puts the hat on, Chamber of Secrets. Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi. Help me, Obi-Wan. And what does the hat do? Farts out the sword. Was the sword inside the hat? Is that where Dumbledore keeps the sword hidden? Is there a secret magical sheath in the hat? No. It's because Harry, who is, Dumbledore says in the book 2, only a true Gryffindor could have pulled that sword out of the hat. Notice the magical joke. Pulling a rabbit out of a hat. Pulling a sword out of a hat. Only a true Gryffindor could have done that. Why? Because the hat belongs to Gryffindor and the sword belonged to Gryffindor. So why doesn't Tom Riddle go for the hat?
Maybe he's never.
Because J.K. Rowling doesn't remember that she said the hat is a relic of Godric Gryffindor? I think that's the case. I think when she writes this, she's completely forgetting the hat. Now, maybe in Pottermore, she explains it away. Right? So, they keep talking. Dumbledore says, I think I know what the sixth Horcrux is, which he actually says is Nagini. All right? So, he says, I'm sure he was intending to make his final Horcrux with your death. Kill Harry and do what? Put the soul where? In Nagini. Okay? Harry. So, once all these things are gone, and he asks, does he know when a Horcrux is killed? Dumbledore. Good question, Harry. I don't think so. I think he's both so immersed in evil, and these crucial parts of him have been detached for so long, he does not feel as we do. Maybe at the point of death he will. Right? When he found out the diary had been destroyed, I've been told, he was really angry. Right? So, Harry. So if all the Horcruxes are destroyed, every last one, then Voldemort could be killed. So what does that mean? Locket, cup, diadem. What's the last Horcrux, jump to end of book 7, to be destroyed? It's Nagini. By who? The other choice. I think so, says Dumbledore. Without his Horcruxes, Voldemort will be a mortal man with a maimed... We're not going to do these today. With a maimed... Because I need to finish this book. With a maimed and diminished soul. Never forget that while his soul may be damaged beyond repair, his brain and his magical power will remain intact. It will take, Harry, what? Uncommon skill and what? Power. To kill Voldemort. Even without his Horcruxes. Harry, kind of like Frodo to Gandalf. But I have so little of these. Wit, strength, heart. Harry, I haven't got uncommon skill and power. You have a power that Voldemort has never had. Harry's like, oh my God, you were kidding me. You're telling me I can love, so Voldemort just needs a big hug? Or maybe a wet, sloppy kiss? I'll get Hermione, you know. Harry, I know, I can love. Big deal. Notice he stops himself from saying that. If she were to update it, he'd probably think, big effing deal. And she would write out E-F-F-I-G, like she does in book 7. Yes, Harry, you can love. Which, given everything that's happened to you, is pretty remarkable. So when the prophecy says, I'll have power of the Dark Lord, it just means love? Harry's thinking, I get a big, ultra mega death-killing wand, No, Harry, it's not that kind of power. It's just love. Never forget that what the prophecy says is only significant because Voldemort made it so. What's Harry still thinking? Prophecy. Written in stone. It's like something predetermined from the creation of the universe. Harry Potter will kill, or not, Lord Voldemort. Harry, but it comes to the same. No, it doesn't, says Dumbledore. You're setting too much store by the prophecy. But if Voldemort had never heard of the prophecy, would it have been fulfilled? If he'd never heard of the prophecy, would he have come hunting for you? But last year you said one of us had to kill the other. Why? Because Voldemort made a mistake. Harry, if he'd never heard those words, what? Would he have imparted in you a furious desire for revenge? If he'd never murdered your father, would he have imparted in you a furious desire for revenge? Of course not. If he had not forced your mother to die, would he have given you magic protection? No. Don't you see? Voldemort created you. You are his own worst enemy. And then listen to what Dumbledore says. Have you any idea how much tyrants fear the people they oppress? All of them realize that one day, amongst their many victims, there is sure to be one who rises against them and strikes back. You know, in the one, which one is it? It's one of the Marvel movies. Can't remember which one. It's one where Loki first shows up. Captain America. Right? Is it? No, it's not Captain America.
America's the one that stands up against
Yeah, it's just before that. When Loki is there in Germany, and is Adventures Assemble, is it that one? And he stands up, you know, and there's all these Germans, they just kicked out of this big concert hall kind of thing. And he says, bow down before me, you know. And this one little frail German guy says, nein, I will not stand. I will not sit down. I will stand. I've seen you before. Who's he talking about? Hitler, because we see the tattoo on his arm. Why? Because he knows if I bow down, what happens? We all lose. It takes what? One to stand up. Okay? Yeah, Cap, Iron Man show up just in the nick of time so the poor old guy doesn't get, blasted to smithereens. Okay? But the principle's the same. How did Lenin and Stalin take over Russia? Did they take over Russia with millions of troops? Did Mao Zedong take over China with millions of followers? No. I mean, there were 700 million people in China. I think that's about right. In 1950. He didn't have the vast majority. So what would have happened if the vast majority had said no? He'd have lost. Hitler would have lost. That, the quote I had up here the other day. All that is necessary for evil to thrive is for good men to do nothing. Dumbledore is saying all tyrants are the same. They what? They fear the people they rule. Voldemort is no different. He was always on the lookout for one who would challenge him. He heard the prophecy, boom, he jumps. Why? Because the one born of people who had defied him thrice. James and Lily apparently defied Voldemort 3 times. Frank and Alice apparently defied him 3 times. He says, by attempting to kill you, he made you what you are. He says, Harry, has it never occurred to you that after everything that's happened, you've never once shown the slightest desire to become one of Voldemort's followers? Well, of course I haven't. Why? You're protected by your ability to love. Does that mean he's going to leave here and go up to Ron and go, Ron, I love you so much? And Neville and Draco? No. So what's meant by love? It's what Harry shows to Luna at the end of the 5th book. When Harry's all focused on himself and his loss. It's what Harry shows to Hagrid in book 3. When Hagrid receives word, Buckbeak's going to be executed. And Harry's all focused on his loss because he hears Sirius Black killed my parents and he was godfather to me. Okay? What does he do? Both those instances. He turns outward, showing what? Compassion. And if you're not focused on yourself and you're focused on somebody else, what virtue are you modeling? Are you displaying? Other than this. Yes. It's humility. Humility is not caring for yourself. It's not caring for yourself. It's saying, Somebody else's need, what? Is greater than my own. Somebody else's problem is greater than my own. And we see Harry, from book 1 on, repeatedly demonstrate this. Repeatedly. We're going to see it at the beginning of book 7. In a little conversation he has with Dudley, when all the others are around there getting ready to whisk Harry off. Right? And then we see it at the end of book 7. I've seen the real you, Tom. Try for some remorse. Why does he offer Tom Riddle the opportunity to feel remorse? What's he giving him the opportunity to do? Put his soul back together. Put it in another phrase, redeem himself. What does he give in Slughorn? Redeem yourself. You will cancel out, the scene again in Avengers when Black Widow is talking with Loki. And he says, your ledger has so much blood just pouring off it. You think you can wipe all that away by kind of like a single act of contrition? Harry is saying, yep, you can. You can. Real contrition can do that. But Harry kind of says, Dumbledore goes on. He knows it now. Voldemort knows this now about you. But I don't think he understands why, Harry. But he was in such a hurry to mutilate his own soul, he never paused to understand the incomparable power of a soul that is untarnished and whole. Okay, now, Dumbledore is essentially saying, what about Harry here? If his soul is untarnished, then what does that mean? He's perfect. Okay? Well, we've seen Harry's not perfect, right? What did he do to Crabbe the one day when he's walking down the hallway? He uses that jinx that Snape created and makes his toenails grow enormously fast. So as he's walking, his feet start to hurt because the toenails are pushing against the end of the shoe and thus back into his feet. That's a nasty curse when you think about it. But it all comes down to the same thing. Doesn't it? I've got to kill him or got to. Again, what's the language Harry's using? I am forced. Necessity, fate, destiny. All says him or me. What's Dumbledore trying to get Harry to see?
It's his choice.
It's your choice, Harry. And how did he get him to see that? If there'd never been a curse, Harry, what? You would never stop trying to get Voldemort. We know it, both of us. Just imagine, if you'd never heard of the prophecy, how would you feel about Voldemort? Think! I mean, he wants Harry immediate response. Come on, why? Because the immediate instinctual response is what he really thinks. I'd want him finished. Why? What does he think of? He thinks of Cedric. He thinks of his parents. And a flame seemed to leap inside his chest, searing his throat. Is he getting ready to vomit and this is bile coming up? No, this is the same flame we're going to see in Harry's chest in the next book that gets put out the more he doubts Dumbledore. It is the ARDOR, ardor of love. It's the flame, the passion of love, not erotic. I'd want him finished, and I'd want to do it. Of course you would. You see, Harry, the prophecy doesn't mean you have to do anything. It caused Voldemort to mark you as his equal. In other words, you'd want to do this, but the prophecy and Voldemort's actions do what? They give you the tools to actually do it. In other words, if he hadn't chosen you, Dumbledore is saying, you would still want to do this. Only problem is, you die. And it wouldn't be the kind of death I need from you. You die, Harry, because you wouldn't have the ability. And that, Dumbledore says, and Harry finishes the sentence, one of us is going to end up killing the other. Why? Because Voldemort thinks he has to kill Harry, and Harry now realizes he chooses to kill Voldemort. Choosing and wanting are not the same thing, however. And the light bulb goes off. Now he understands what Dumbledore's been trying to tell him. It was, he thought, the difference between being dragged into the arena to face a battle to the death and what? Walking into the arena with your head held high. Where in the world does she get this image? What's the difference, however? Is it a gladiator? Walking into an arena, head held high? It's not the gladiator. That is the right image. Who is it? Who else went into the arena? Close. Reminds you of who? Yeah, essentially. Early saints of the church. Who are what? Taken into the Roman Colosseum to fight. Gladiators, lions, tigers, bears. Oh my. One of the greatest of them, a guy named St. Ignatius of Antioch. Next book, 2 names. Ignotus, Antioch. Are 2 of what? The 3 brothers. Ignotus, Antioch, Cadmus are the 3 brothers of the tale of the 3 Deathly Hallows. Okay? St. Ignatius of Antioch was arrested by the emperor and taken to the Roman Colosseum. And we have eyewitness accounts, as we have eyewitness accounts of St. Perpetua, and a whole slew of martyrs. And some of them are dragged in. Why? Because they don't want to die. But others, they don't have to be dragged. They don't have to be bound. They walk in freely. Because St. Ignatius said, he actually told people he wrote letters to. Because other Christians were trying to get him to escape. They were bribing his guards. And he said, stop. This is the only way I can be a true Christian. This is the only way I can be a true Christian. What does he mean? Die. I am going to God. Okay? I think she has that in mind here. Of what Harry is thinking. Is Harry thinking of St. Ignatius? No. Why? Harry wouldn't know St. Ignatius from Captain Kangaroo. He doesn't have any religious knowledge or training or history. But the image is the difference between being dragged, kicking and screaming, and what? It's the same image we saw Harry give us at the end of book 4. I'm not going to be killed, what? Cowering behind a headstone. I'm going to die like my father. And he stands up and steps out from behind it. What's that showing us? Harry's got to learn to face death. He's not only got to learn to face death, he's got to learn to accept death. And not just any kind of death. What kind of death? Because you get 2 different forms of death are portrayed here. One is whose death that we've seen, that we've talked about. Nearly headless Nick. Why is Nick still there? He was afraid to die. Why did Sirius go on? He wasn't. He was prepared. In other words, Sirius, to use Dumbledore's words from the first book, what? Had a well-organized mind. His priorities were in order. Nearly headless Nicks? Not so much. In fact, he's still, 500 years later, what? Kind of grieving over how he died. Because he didn't get his head all the way chopped off. But Sirius is beyond the veil. Talking with somebody else. Because when Harry and Luna go into the death room, what do they hear? They hear voices behind the veil. What does that tell us? Those voices are communicating. There's communion of sorts. There's fellowship of sorts in death. When those voices come out of Voldemort's wand, Book 4, what do we have to assume they've been doing just before they came out? Talking about what's going on. Because they come out, and what do? Hold on, Harry. You fight him, boy. Your father's coming. Don't break the... Harry, take my body back. Chill, Cedric. You know, hands are kind of busy here. This has got to really sink in order to understand the rest of this and all the books on it. Okay? Because what has Dumbledore just told him? Yeah, Harry, one of you's got to kill the other. Why? Because you want to. You choose to. Not want, desire. Not want, you really got to desire to inflict pain, like the Cruciatus curse. He tries the Cruciatus on Bellatrix, right? Book 5. And she says, never done one before, have you, boy? Righteous anger won't hurt me for long. Notice her terms. Harry feels righteous anger there. And yet, Book 7, he's got to do a Cruciatus on one of the Caro twins. And he's going to go, oh, that felt good. Yeah, Bellatrix was right. You have to want to do it. But even there, it's still described as righteous anger. Why? Why does he use it on, I think it's Amicus. What has he done? He spat in McGonagall's face. Harry's like, you don't do that. Okay? So, moving along real quickly. Next chapter. Harry sees Malfoy in tears. And what does he do when Malfoy realizes Harry's there? First thing comes to his mind, Sectum Sempra. Does he know what Sectum Sempra does? No, he doesn't. Okay? And he nearly kills Malfoy. I'm going to skip a bunch. We get the Seer Overheard chapter. And around 45, 546 or so. What does Harry now know? Who overheard the seer?
Snape.
Who told Voldemort? Snape. Who's responsible for the death of Harry's parents in Harry's mind? Snape. Okay? And Dumbledore says, sure, wish you hadn't heard that. He says, Snape was really sorry, Harry. And Harry's like, no, that doesn't cut it. Really sorry doesn't cut it. Well, what did Harry tell Slughorn? You can cancel everything out. What does Harry need from Dumbledore about Snape to cancel out everything he knows about Snape?
The reason that Dumbledore trusts him.
Yeah. Which he gets eventually. Okay? So, they go off to the cave. And Dumbledore drinks the potion. Why? He's got to get the potion gone in order to get the locket. Okay? Why else?
Because he doesn't know if the potion
Okay, does he not know what the potion will do? Doesn't he? It's just water.
He kind of hints that he knows what it is. He's talking about how Voldemort thinks that pain is the worst thing he can do.
What does the potion do to Dumbledore?
Makes him relive his worst memory.
Okay, two things actually. Makes him relive his worst memories, which are what? We don't find out until later, but yeah, death of his sister and mother. Okay. What else does the potion do? What else is the potion? It's poison. It's poison. Why do they need to see Snape so quickly? Because he's the potions master. Snape can create an antidote. Well, what time, metaphorically, is it for Dumbledore?
The 11th hour.
Yeah, it's getting pretty close to midnight, meaning clocking out time. How long has it been since he broke the ring? Close to about 9 months. What do we find out in the memory later about what happened once he broke that ring? This clock starts ticking. Snape tells him, "You got about a year, Dumbledore. Spinner's in." When does that occur? Before Spinner's in. Because in Spinner's in, Snape tells Narcissa and Bellatrix what? Dumbledore was grievously wounded in his battle with the Dark Lord. Liar, liar, pants on fire. He wasn't grievously wounded. Voldemort didn't touch him. How was he grievously wounded? He tried to destroy the Horcrux. Failed. He only just...
Because he put it on.
Yeah. Well,
The resurrection stone, so he put it on so he could see his mother and his sister.
but he can't, right? He does finally destroy it. How?
Sword is about
He
to
uses the sword. Okay, once he realizes that. So the clock's ticking there. Dumbledore's days are numbered. Well, the lightning struck tower. How numbered are they? And notice the difference between this and the film. What does Snape do in the film before he kills Dumbledore? What does he do to Harry? Well, let me back up with that. What does Dumbledore do to Harry in the book? He stuns him. He petrifies him. So Harry can't move. He's got his invisibility cloak on. Right? Does he? What does Snape do? In the film, he sees Harry and he does this. Careful, because this is scary. He doesn't want Harry to say anything. And Harry just sits there because Snape goes and lets Snape kill Dumbledore? Is that in Harry's behavior wheelhouse? No, especially what? You killed my parents. You know, like Inigo Montoya. Prepare to die. Completely out of character. So Dumbledore stuns him, so Harry can't do anything. So Harry has to sit there and listen to all the conversation. Okay? I'm going to spend probably, I don't know, not real long, just a few minutes on Tuesday at the very end of this. Because we have to relate the very end of it to something that was said earlier. Okay? And then we'll really jump into Book 7, more than we have already. Oh, as much as you can. Just as much as you can. I don't know. A fourth, because we've got 4 more days of class. So I'd say a minimum of a fourth. I'd say, I've already started jumping around to the end, so.
I didn't know which email you preferred, so I really want to do my paper on significance of names and meanings. Is that okay?
Yeah, good.
before that happened.
Well,
Only way they
Would it
fix
really be
Would
him
they?
to do his job, to do his Horcrux?
Well, think about it though. Would they really notice the